Well, Paul Feinbaum has chimed in on Georgia's game at South Carolina. This is a game for the Dogs that has always been a tricky one in Williams-Brice, at least before Kirby Smart's time there, and the time since he's won each game by double digits. But Paul had this to say earlier this week about Georgia going to South Carolina. He says, Georgia knows what they're getting into. They are not looking past it. He says, I'd like to see a good game. I'm not sure we will. I'm not sure we will either. We'll see. I think it's kind of curious that not curious is maybe the wrong word, but the line for this game being 3.5 scores is hard to really digest considering how long these two teams have played what seems like pretty tight games. But right now, the two programs are just not really in the same space. In fact, Paul said this about South Carolina. I think this is actually the key point. Let's see if this is the year South Carolina makes the quantum leap. And really, I think to me, a couple things here. Number one, if if Georgia goes and struggles on Saturday, I think it says more about the Dogs than it does about South Carolina. This South Carolina team is limited defensively on the in terms of stopping the run. They've already lost a game at South Carolina. There's no at Arkansas. There's no shame in losing games, but the way they got beat up at Arkansas, I think, is concerning. I think their performance against Georgia State was just not indicative of a team being very good, and the optimism surrounding Spencer Rattler has been tampered down a touch by just two touchdowns and three interceptions. I think if you played one game and if it were like that, it'd be something. But to be a couple games in the season and then you're playing one of the toughest defenses you're going to face, um, I think this is going to be an extremely challenging game for South Carolina, and that's what Paul thinks too. Again, he says Georgia knows what they're getting into. They are not looking past it. I would like to see a good game. I'm not sure we will. I think the last time that I can remember, at least, Georgia looking past a game, if you want to put it like that, was certainly the most recent time that I remember. It was a few seasons ago in 2019 when they lost to South Carolina. A season ago, I don't think they looked past anybody. 2020, was such a hard, so hard, it was so hard to diagnose things in 2020. Perhaps they were looking past Arkansas. I do not think they were looking past Cincinnati, but they won that Arkansas game by more than anybody in the league won that week. I think they won by 27. Yeah, 37-10, something like that. But it wasn't, they weren't looking past those guys. They had the wrong quarterback in there. So Stetson came in and saved them. In 19, obviously, with the South Carolina game, Kirby pretty much said they were not ready to play that game. And then I just I'm not sure there's been a lot of games over the years where I can say these guys aren't ready for this game. Um, so I think Paul's kind of got a good point there with all of that. Make sure you're picking up Dogstruction. Uh, 80 pages talking about the 2021 National Championship for the Georgia Bulldogs. And it's got a lot of images and the storytelling in here you're not going to find anywhere else. Make sure you're picking it up. The link down below. I know a lot of folks are seeing this for the first time because there's so many new viewers. Make sure you're checking it out. The link is down below. Thanks for all the support. It's the number one way to support us. Going to Columbia, hotel rooms, etc. Those are not cheap. And we will be at Missouri in a couple of weeks as well. So make sure you're supporting the site. Check out Dogstruction down below. I think, for Georgia coming into this game, we're sitting here looking at a team that is ranked number one in the country by one poll. Alabama is going to have to earn their way back to number one. I don't know if they can pull that off this week. Georgia would probably have to really not play well. Um, and although they didn't play so hot offensively against Samford last week. They won that game going away. They were up 30 at the half. just it didn't play as well in the second half as you would have liked to have seen. I think even 40-0 is sort of a different conversation. And there were just too many misses in the red zone. But back to Paul's point, Georgia, that Samford, this is not Paul's point exclusively, but that Samford performance was really not up to the standard of what Georgia has put on the field, put on tape lately. Lots of 30-point games and beyond for the Dogs. The only exception last season against Clemson in the first game and against Alabama in the first Alabama game. But and really even going back to 2020, they were putting up a lot of points when JT was in there. So this offense was not at peak efficiency in 2000 in the Samford game, and I think that maybe that has focused them more. We didn't hear anything from Kirby this week about poor practices. Um, that really wasn't the focus. Shane Beamer has really tried to get. I mean, it seems like the Carolina folks are kind of disappointed that it's not a night game. But the truth is that when you're sort of not the number one game, and in the SEC this week, the Auburn game against Penn State is considered the number one game because CBS picked it. But when you're not the number one game, the likelihood now of you playing at noon on ESPN is not out of the question. Used to be this game would have been pushed to ESPN at 6 or 9 o'clock. Obviously, not 9 o'clock Eastern time. We do have a Miami Miami Texas A&M game at 9 o'clock. That's really late. But this game has often been a night game in Columbia. 96, all the 90s. I feel like 96, 98 for sure. But uh, you know, everybody wants a night game. But the truth is, you've got the number one team in the country coming to your place. Shane Beamer is doing all he can to get folks fired up for this game, but they're not blind. They're not, football experts. They're not football coaches, but they see what they see, and they know that South Carolina is going to have a monumental performance to beat this particular Georgia team. This is not the same team that Carolina had when they upset the Dogs in Athens at noon in 2019. It's not the same Georgia team. It's not the same South Carolina team. Although probably better offensively, South Carolina, they're certainly not better defensively. So um, this is a really not ideal matchup for Carolina, and trying to get your fans really into it is great. I think there's a lot to be said for what Shane Beamer's trying to do, but they've watched these two games and they know there's a buzzsaw coming right now from the east, from the west, and it's not going to be a lot of fun. Just to even stick close with this Georgia team, South Carolina is going to really have to play well. They're not going to be able to make mistakes. They're going to have big plays like they did against Georgia State, frankly, to win that game. They're going to have to have something similar in this game against the Dogs. I don't see it. As Paul says, says, I quote, I would like to see a good game. I'm not sure we will. I'm not sure we will either. I think the question here is, how does Georgia look? This is about Georgia. This is not about South Carolina. This is about what Georgia looks like, how they're functioning offensively for sure, how Stetson Bennett and company are executing in the pass game. Is Georgia going to take advantage of South Carolina's really not good run defense? And can South Carolina score on a team that's allowed a field goal through two games? It's been a long time since Georgia allowed multiple touchdowns by an offense in a game. That's all the way back in December of 21. And you have to go back to the Tennessee game to see the last time before that they allowed multiple touchdowns on offense in a game. In fact, I'm starting to wonder how far back this goes, because when you think about, obviously the Alabama game scored a touchdown from the inside the 20. Michigan scored it in junk time. Alabama scored a lot of points in Atlanta. Georgia Tech did not score. Charleston Southern scored a defensive touchdown. Tennessee scored, I believe it was 2 offensive touchdowns. As Missouri did not score an offensive touchdown. I can't remember if I think Florida did score an offensive touchdown very late in the game. And then Kentucky had 13 points. So we know they scored a touchdown. We know they scored a touchdown late in that game and then went for two. I'm trying to remember how that went, but it's going to be really challenging for South Carolina on Saturday. We'll have you covered. Make sure you're watching Dog Post. Thanks for paying attention. Check out Dog Instruction below. Thanks for watching.